There's a category of emotions known as social emotions. These emotions are ones that require mentalizing, us attributing thoughts, feelings, or behaviors to someone else. Whether real or perceived, we feel the weight of the other's thoughts, feelings, behaviors inside ourselves. These social emotions include emotions like guilt and shame. But what's the difference in those two? The main difference seems to be what we're labeling as wrong. Guilt can serve as an indicator light that we've done something wrong, or at least that we perceive we've done something wrong. We can hold this up against our values, what we believe to be true, to shape our actions if we need. Despite being uncomfortable and unpleasant, guilt can be helpful in certain situations. But what about shame? If guilt is based on the idea that we've done something wrong, maybe shame is based on the idea that we are something wrong. I wonder if that's what Jesus felt on Good Friday. Put through a trial where no wrong action was proven, especially no action he would have thought was wrong. Put through humiliation and hung on a cross, the type of execution designed to be shameful. His identity mocked, his title and mission used against him. Did Jesus feel shame? Were his followers ashamed, feeling the weight of that as people recognized them in the following hours? If Jesus was the Messiah, if follower of Jesus was an identity, then what happens if those are proven wrong? If who we are seems to be wrong? Does shame, like guilt, have any potential at all for helping us? On a physiological level, shame pulls a lot of the same strings as other emotions. Our nervous system kicks into survival mode. We feel the internal shifts that we often call fight, flight, or freeze responses. These happen in an instant, designed to keep us safe, to help us respond to threats. But what if the threat is me? The thing about these survival instincts is that they come with a disconnection. If I'm trying to find safety, it makes sense that I would add a barrier or I would add distance. Connection becomes harder, not just on a theoretical level, but on a biological one. Externally, this cuts off my ability to engage with others on a deeper level, especially if the potential outcome is you seeing my true defective self. Internally, it limits my ability for self-reflection, for responding to myself with compassion instead of judgment. Long-term, shame is linked to things like isolation, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, low empathy, and more. In fact, there seems to be little evidence at all that links shame with long-term behavior change. So it's not even a good strategy for making changes. So what about Good Friday? What about Jesus? What about the cross, designed to instill shame for those on it and for their followers? What happens when the cross is redeemed? What happens when the symbol that says who you are is wrong is met with the one who says, I am? What happens when the title of king, written mockingly, ends up to be true? What then? What does that have to say about all the other parts of us that we think are wrong? If love wins the day, if perfect love casts out all fear, where does that leave our fears that who we are is wrong? Is it possible? Is it possible that part of what dies that day is shame?
Is it possible? Is it possible that what Jesus suffered and died for was not just our sins, but also our shame? Shame, that all-consuming eater of worlds, the great separator of us from God, from others, from ourselves, it hides with us in the garden. It coils around our insides and whispers, you are not good enough, you are not smart enough, not right, not worthy, not enough. The long thread we pull to unravel the world from starlight to inseam that splits us apart stitch by stitch. We are made in God's image. And what is that if not love, if not light, if not more than this unworth we hold hidden inside our skin? Because that is where the sinful shame grows rich and thick and verdant. That is where the vines blind and breach the southern wall. That is where we hide in our silence, in our secrets. And it spreads to places where we would do anything but name it, where we would rather name ourselves murderer than racist, because the shame of unchecked privilege is named fear, and it writhes inside our bellies until it becomes us, and we are lost. We are consumed inside to out. We are chaff and hollow, and we scatter as the winds blow us. We would rather be a cynic than a romantic, because sentimentality is the hearth over which mediocrity hangs its hat, because having relationships with our body must be wrong, and those who love our minds must be worse. We would rather be hateful than vulnerable or weak, because it is better to be feared than loved, better to lash out than be struck, better to be the one who leaves than the one who is left behind. We would rather see ourselves a zealot than a hypocrite, when so often those are intertwined, and we would rather stone the glass of our neighbor's echo chamber than admit we live in our own, would rather not examine our rage because rage is righteous, and we would rather embody fury than empathy, rather be righteous than changeable. But what if God is asking us to change? What if that is what he died for? What if he is calling us to follow him and do the things we don't want to do because it would require facing the fear, the exquisite pitch of all we think we are and so often are not lovable, not successful, not strong, not worthy of his belief in us? But what if it were possible that Jesus stood between the world and the stories we tell about ourselves? What if we were spared the commonplace hells we traffic in? What if we admitted we'd grown accustomed to the smell of sulfur and that we had no business being blind to the radical beauty we were made to step into, that Jesus calls on us to own? What if this day, this Good Friday, is a chance to stand in our holy, sacred inheritance when we are at once horrified at its history and elated at its purpose? Has this day, too, been used to call us into shame for centuries? Have we marked it and said how lucky we are? Yes. How unworthy we are? Yes. How undeserving we are of this trade of life, of spirit, of sacrifice? We are all of us acting like fools, which God didn't make us to be and Jesus didn't die for. He died for the dazzling radiance that is each and every one of you, you who are worthy of his love because he has given it to you, your neighbors who are worthy of your love and his because he commands it. This day, a flicker of light in a vast darkness that is nothing and everything all at once. We are worthy of being here. We are worthy of love. You are worthy of love.
By now, I'm probably not introducing to anyone who's listening to this of the idea of decision fatigue. This year, this pandemic craziness, we have all had to make so many decisions, and life has gotten so complicated. And an array of these decisions have made us feel all kinds of different ways. And for some of us, the different situations that the pandemic has placed us in has made us feel this shame, whether it be for the wrestling with what to do about schools or what to do with your work situation. The reality, the arrays could be almost endless of things decisions that we've had to make that could cause us to feel shame. And on Good Friday, historically, the church has focused on sin and on the cross being this this way of the forgiveness of sin. But I wonder if this year, in light of all that's happened and is happening, if we don't need to also remember the depth of shame that Jesus would have experienced on the cross, that the cross was not just a tool of execution, but it was a way of completely and utterly humiliating the one being crucified. It wasn't just physically painful for the Christ, but it was painful at a depth of being, knowing that Jesus' disciples and his mother and his followers were hearing about or directly observing what was happening to his body and to the mission of this person that they believed was the Messiah, but who is now hanging from a Roman tool of execution, the one thing a Messiah wasn't allowed to do. So this year, as we bring Good Friday to a close, I encourage you to take some time to ask yourself, where in your life do you have unreleased shame? Are you living in shame? Are you holding on to shame? Where are you refusing to accept that on the cross, Jesus did bigger work than just dealing with the forgiveness of sins, but the obliteration, the overwhelming nature of shame itself. It's fine to feel bad for mistakes that we make, but it's not okay to allow those mistakes to then make us feel as though we've been redefined as bad people. It's one thing to do a bad thing or make a bad decision. It's another thing to allow a mistake that we've made to completely redefine the way that we see ourselves. And Jesus on the cross, as he experiences the magnitude of shame that's hard for us to even begin to wrap our minds around, swallows all of that into himself and wants to offer it to us and to free us, to liberate us from this horrific human experience of emotion that we have when we feel the scorn or the disdain of other people in our life. Christ looks upon us with love. God looks upon you with love. And this Good Friday, what do you need to release? What do you need to give up? What do you need to write on your own plate and smash on the ground and say, enough. I am loved. I am forgiven. And I'm no longer going to live defined by shame or by mistakes, but I'm going to live defined by whose child I am and by what is in front of me. So friends, may it be so.